in to the Token and Hobbs Show on the Roads to Liberty Network.
What's up, my cool cats and kittens? Welcome to another episode of the Token and Hobbs Show here on the Think Liberty Network. So glad that you guys decided to join us live on a Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central. I am your host, Mr. Token, joined with Congressman Justin Hobbs. Any minute now, he's going to storm Washington and take his rightful place. Can't wait for that. How you doing, my man?
Yes, any minute now you're going to read in the New York Times that Congressman-elect storms the steps of the Capitol wearing naught but night vision goggles, a Hawaiian t-shirt, armed with a tomahawk and a flashbang grenade.
That would be the greatest thing to ever happen. I'm not going to lie.
I'm going full Donald Duck on this one, a shirt with no pants.
You're gonna have some war paint on?
Maybe. We'll see how crazy it gets.
Oh, man, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I can't wait for the day that Mr. Justin Hobbs decides to storm the American Capitol building and tar and feather some politicians. Lord knows that they deserve it.
Yeah, it ain't gonna be like one of these pussy January 6th stormings with a bunch of grandmas and weirdos in bison helmets that just like poop on the walls and kick their feet up on the desk. No, this will be a proper, good old-fashioned 1775 style tar and feather storming.
This is the real deal here. This is gonna be what the media pretends January 6th was.
For legal reasons, of course, this is a joke.
Of course, this is always a joke. We're libertarians. We don't actually mean the things we say, right?
And it's like we have any power to accomplish them, even if we did.
No, and we wouldn't want that power. So, I mean, therein lies the great contradiction of libertarianism. We need power in order to abolish the power that we don't want. So, I mean, is this why we're doomed forever to failure, just to watch this country and this world descend further and further into madness as time goes on?
Yes, the great libertarian paradox is indeed a frustrating mistress.
I mean, that does seem to be the way of things these days. I mean, I thought things were bad when I was growing up in the George Bush era, with the Patriot Act and the war on terror and all that fun stuff ramping up. Man, we thought George Bush knew how to spend money. That guy didn't know how to spend shit, right? And that guy, I mean, yeah, we haven't had like a full-scale invasion of a country since Iraq, but that's just because we've learned to disguise our wars better than George Bush. And we're like, we're not going to do that full-scale invasion, send in the army, occupy a country for 20 years thing. We're just gonna, do what we did in Libya or Yemen or Somalia or Syria or all these places. We just put advisors on the ground, right? We just fund this side or that side, and then we just drop an enormous amount of bombs on the country from the air. And then we pretend it's not a war.
Yeah.
Right? We do this rhetorical sleight of hand where we're just like, war? What do you mean war? We're not doing that. And speaking of war, Afghanistan is still going on, and Joe Biden let us all know in his very bizarre, weird press conference that he did in the beginning of the week that we're not going to be out of there this year. Probably not in 2022 either. So I guess we can look forward to Afghanistan going on and on and on. We shouldn't be surprised by this. I mean, it's not like Joe Biden managed to end the Iraq War in the 8 years he was vice president. So why should you expect this old senile man who probably doesn't remember where Afghanistan is to end this war now? It seems like a bit of an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard the reasons why we can't pull out of I should say with the dreaded air quotes, the reasons why we can't pull out of Afghanistan this year. But in case you haven't, and for anybody out there listening who hasn't, check this out. The reason that they can't pull out is because if they did, they would be in breach of contract with several military contractors, and the Pentagon would be liable to be sued. That's it.
Say that again?
The Pentagon might get sued by contractors for breach of contract if we prematurely pulled out of Afghanistan. The Pentagon, with a larger budget than the next 7 countries combined, an arm of the federal government, which has its foot firmly down on the acceleration pedal of the money printing machine, is scared of getting sued
by contractors.
by contractors.
And you know, these contractors never would have gotten these contracts if they weren't politically in bed with some congressman or senator or
Right.
member of the cabinet in the first place. This is how these people get contracts to begin with. This is what Scott Horton was talking about when we had him on the show a few months back, when he was talking about these wars existing to grease the palms of rich contractors. Like the purpose of these wars, think of war back in ancient times when the Romans invaded Gaul. They didn't invade Gaul so that they could buy swords from the arms contractor in Rome, right? They invaded Gaul for the purpose of stealing wealth and slaves. That's what they did it for. They wanted land. They wanted gold. They wanted slaves. They wanted stuff.
For the betterment and the expansion of Rome, not necessarily. There are obviously senators and politicians and whatnot who got rich off of it more so than anybody else. But the conquests and the expansion was for the Roman Empire.
Yeah, the purpose of wars in ancient time was to bring money in from the outside, and this is not an endorsement of that, right? We are not advocating for the United States to go pillage Iraq. That's not what we're doing. What I'm pointing out is that the purpose of these modern wars is not to bring wealth and prosperity to the United States, much less defend freedom and liberty here. The purpose of these wars is to provide an excuse to give money to wealthy and politically connected contractors. That's why these wars exist. I mean, just a few weeks ago, the F-35 program, which wasted billions and billions of dollars, got canceled and was a giant failure. They never got the goddamn thing to work.
Yeah.
How many billions of dollars did they waste on this thing? It was supposed to be the replacement fighter for the F-16, the F-15, the A-10. It was like supposed to be some all-in-one fighter, and it didn't do any of those things. And they wasted billions and billions and billions of dollars and never actually get to use these things.
Right. The military does this about once every generation. And sometimes they do it with small arms. Sometimes they do it with battleships or other types of Navy vessels, and sometimes they do it with aircraft. They get somebody in some planning office gets a bug in their ass about how we can have like one airframe that will cover all of our bases and it'll do everything excellently, and then reality hits and the taxpayers are on the hook for a few $100 billion. Same thing with the littoral combat ship that they tried to foist onto the Navy a few years back, that it was supposed to be supposed to be like a missile defense ship and a near shore assault craft, or like a staging area for rigid hull inflatable boats, and it was going to have stealth capabilities and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and it's stealth, guys. They can't see it.
Yeah, except for it was like 70 feet tall and it had a tendency to capsize in high winds, and
the engines didn't work.
And the engines didn't work, and the fire control systems caught fire, and a bunch of other crazy shit. They scrapped that. They were going to make like 10 of them. They only ended up making 2 permanent dry dock. The Army tried doing it with a Stryker. They wanted to replace the Bradley, the M113 armored personnel carrier, and the Abrams tank with an 8-wheeled vehicle. Yeah, no. Stryker is pretty good at replacing the Bradley and the 113. Not so much at replacing an Abrams tank. They just
you got tank. You're gonna make a combination troop carrier tank.
I mean, that doesn't even did it with the Merkava. But the thing about the Stryker is that it needed to replace all of these other vehicles and still be narrow enough to be able to drive down a standard road, which means that the thing is really long and really tall, which makes it a huge fucking target. It's quite a bit taller than an Abrams tank, and
Sounds like an MRAP.
and much less armored. So yeah, there's just, you know, it was a decent replacement for the Bradley, and a long overdue replacement for the 113. That's like pre-Vietnam tech. But as far as a main battle tank goes, you can't replace tracks with tires. I don't.
At least the Air Force is getting rid of their ABU uniforms. At least that's happening. And I gotta tell you, wearing those things, they had all the bad camo of an ACU with none of the practicality of them. Right? At least the ACUs, they let you use the cargo pockets. I don't know what the deal with the Air Force is. They're just allergic to allowing people to use cargo pockets. But gotta help you if you wanted to use a goddamn cargo pocket. I don't know. It's stupid. I don't know. I always preferred the way that the Army had their uniforms, even though the Army's camo patterns were no better than the ABUs. It didn't make any goddamn sense at all.
Well, you know, after the Marines adopted MARPAT, it was a rush for a fashion statement. You know, the Navy adopted their blueberries that went by the wayside. Went by the wayside a few years ago.
Those were awful, dude.
Army saw. I mean, there's a Facebook page called Soldier Systems Daily, and the website is soldiersystems.net. You have to go back a few years to find the articles on it, but how the Army came up with the ACU is a convoluted clusterfuck of a mess as far as government ineptitude goes. And talk for a second, I gotta go put a binky in Piglet's mouth.
Oh man, I know exactly how that feels. Fortunately, I was able to put my little ones to bed before this started. But yeah, I mean, me and Hans both spent time in the military. He was in the Army, I was in the Air Force. And the uniforms that we were wearing were pretty retarded, and I didn't like them at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. I always thought that the ACUs were better as far as functionality went. But yeah, the camo patterns didn't make any goddamn sense at all.
Yeah, the cut of the uniform was pretty good, minus the Velcro on every conceivable surface and closure. Velcro is fucking awful. But yeah, the pixelated.
Well, it is pretty nice to be able to like replace your the patches on the shoulders with Velcro. But I don't see why every pocket everywhere had to be, Velcro.
Well, you'd think that being able to replace your patches and stuff would have a little degree of utility to it, but being able to replace your name tapes and Army tape, especially in the early days, made your ACUs prone to theft in the barracks laundry rooms.
I never even thought of that. True.
People were getting their ACUs stolen quite a bit during the transition period. It's like, ooh, hey, washing machine with new ACUs. Fuck.
They didn't make you put laundry marks on those things?
People eventually got around to doing that, writing their names on the inside of them. But like replacing your unit patches and the American flag patch, why? You're at your unit station for a couple of years. The American flag patch, it's like, are you going to like suddenly join the Canadian Army or something? No.
I mean, maybe. You never know. I hear they got pretty good benefits up there. As long as you don't end up in one of Justin Trudeau's COVID pens, then it's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, COVID gulags up there. Yeah. So like the only time that being able to strip your patches off was of any degree of utility was like if you were in special forces and needed to sterilize your uniform for whatever reason, for identification purposes or whatever. But it was more trouble than it was work.
This is true. I do want to talk a little bit about this this Justin Trudeau thing that I just brought up, because this guy is really taking after his father right now. I mean, it's fucking nuts. He sent this out yesterday. I'll just go ahead and read a few of the tweets because this is a big, long thread. I'll read a little bit of it. It goes, "Now is not the time to travel. If you have plans to head somewhere for a long weekend, cancel them. There are other safer ways for you to connect with your family and friends." Well, first of all, thank you, Justin Trudeau. I really need advice from you on how best to hang out with my family and friends. I always make sure to consult with my president before getting with my family to see how he feels about it, right? And I know those polite Canadians up north, they do the same with their prime minister. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Trudeau. For those who need to travel, take note of the measures that are in place when you return to Canada. If you're flying back to the country, you'll need to show a negative PCR test result before you board the plane. Alrighty then. When you land, you'll need to take another PCR test. Why? First of all, that seems kind of weird to take 2 tests within a couple of hours of each other. But I mean, okay, weirdo. You'll then have to wait at an approved hotel and at your own expense for the results to come back. Now, see, that's the weird part to me because I remember taking a COVID test once and I got the results in minutes. Right? There wouldn't have even been enough time for me to get to a hotel from the testing clinic. Right? So what the heck is he talking about? Stay at an approved hotel until the results come back? Are they not using rapid testing up there in Canada? What's that about?
The biggest fuck you in that entire at your own expense. It's like, do I have an option? No. Fuck you, pay me. Like, what? No. What if I don't want to? Too bad.
This is Canada. What do you think? You live in a free country? It goes on, and this is the best part. This is what I really want to get to. If your results come back negative, you'll be allowed to head home and finish your mandatory quarantine there. So if you don't have COVID, quarantine. Awesome. If your test results come back positive, you'll need to immediately quarantine in designated government facilities. This is not optional. So it's official. Justin Trudeau has gone full Fidel Castro and is setting up COVID gulags up in Canada for people coming back with a positive COVID test. So look, remember when we were talking about here in the States where people were talking about making COVID positive people leave their homes, like going into people's homes and removing people who tested positive for COVID and putting them in a government facility to quarantine. Remember how we were talking about that here? Like, oh yeah, try that shit here. You'll get a bullet through the face. Well, apparently in Canada, they're actually doing it. That's an actual real life thing that's happening in Canada right now, and it's not optional, and you have to pay for it yourself.
Yeah.
Cancel your plans, people. Justin Trudeau knows how best you need to live your life. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yep, they're gonna stick you in the COVID gulag and expect you to pay for the privilege. Wonderful. Thank you, Fidel Jr.
It's absolutely amazing that something like that would even be considered in a free country. Like, it should be. If your results come back negative, you're free to go because you don't have COVID. Obviously, that's what the testing's for, right? Like, that's the whole point, to see if you have COVID or not. I mean, if the test isn't telling you if you have COVID or not, why test at all? Right. So if you have no COVID, you should be free to go. If you have COVID, then you should go home and stay there for a couple of weeks. Not, if you're negative, then you have to stay home because fuck you. That's what we decided because we're trying to keep people safe. And if you're positive, off to Canadian gulag.
Yeah.
And then, oddly enough, Canadian gulag is probably a lot like Siberian gulag.
Right.
Very similar climates, I hear.
Yeah. Tests come back negative, still go to quarantine. Well, then what was the point of the test and the mandated staycation at a government-approved hotel if you're worried about an incubation period causing a false test? then the rules should be go home and quarantine. We'll test you in a week or two. And if you're negative, you're free to business. If you're positive, quarantine a couple more weeks. None of this, go to our hotel that we approve of and are probably getting some money on the backslide out of, and stay there for an indeterminate amount of time, followed by your test results, followed by a further 2 weeks of quarantine. It's all these like extra steps that are unnecessary, and there seems to be a lot of money exchanging hands between Canadian citizens without their voluntary consent, and these hotels. I'd be really interested to see if Justin Trudeau or any members of his cabinet have an ownership stake in any of these government-approved hotels. I wonder if Canada has a FOIA equivalent where somebody could figure that out.
Well, I'm sure Justin Trudeau, who has been at the heart of many a scandal in Canada, has probably learned his lesson from such a thing. I'm not saying that he's not corrupt and making money out of this. I'm saying that he's probably learned his lesson and is smart enough not to get caught a second time. So you're probably never going to connect anything like that to him. He's just trying to keep you safe. That's what all of this is about. That's what this entire last year has been about. That's what Joe Biden setting up COVID passports is all about, just trying to keep you safe. You heard about this? New York City is starting to roll out a COVID passport program, and Joe Biden is trying to do the same thing with the federal government, setting up a COVID passport for internal movements. Now, I just got to say, there's a lot of people online who are trying to convince you that this COVID passport shit is no big deal. Like, you don't got to worry about it. This is not going to be a violation of your privacy or your liberties. What are you talking about, you paranoid libertarians? And these are the same exact people who a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, were telling you just 2 weeks. It's not a big deal. 2 weeks of flag. You can stay inside for 2 weeks, can't you? And after that happens, the hospitals won't be overwhelmed and you'll be able to go back to your life, no problem. Well, guess what? That was a lie. That was a lie from the very beginning. They didn't mean that. What they meant by 2 weeks to flatten the curve was, hey, once we have you inside your homes, locked up and scared, we can get you to do just about anything we want. And 1 year later, what do you know? All these people are still locked inside their homes, scared to death of a fucking bug. Like, it's a fucking a virus going around, and they're all scared shitless of it, even though for almost everybody out there, it's hardly a threat at all. Right? Do some exercise, lose some weight. You know, that'll probably do more to increase your lifespan than a vaccine will. Right? It'll protect you from the COVID and from diabetes. A win-win there. But instead, it's one of the funny things about this virus is that living a healthy lifestyle is the best way to combat it. Right? Yep. First of all, not being old, which I understand you can't control. Right? But if you're a young person, right, and you're healthy, you got just about nothing to fear from this virus. But you never hear that. You never hear that. It's always, you got to lock you inside your home for an entire year. You got to not see your family. You got to not see your friends. If you do, you got to quarantine. Or remember in California was putting all those idiotic rules and how you can have Thanksgiving. Oh, you can only serve yourself. Only one person go to the bathroom at one time. You got to be outside, and no horned instruments. Very important. Only strings. Remember all that shit. People were telling you for an entire year in order to keep you safe, apparently. And now come these COVID passports, and they're trying to tell you not to worry about it. But here's the thing. I don't trust these motherfuckers. I don't trust a single goddamn one of them. I think every single one of them is lying. They're full of shit, and they're using it as an excuse to further erode your liberty and increase their power over you. And don't think it's a coincidence that they're doing this at the same time they're trying to enact more gun control. It's all connected, and it's all a conspiracy to take away your personal liberties.
Yep. George Carlin said in one of his sketches many years ago that the word bipartisan was simply code for a larger than normal deception about to take place. So when this whole COVID crap started kicking off, you remember a year ago when everybody still didn't have the, quite the idea of what was going on, I was saying it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And I caught a lot of flack from fellow libertarians, people who watch this show, be like, let's just give it a little bit of time until we can figure it out. But my bullshit detector was on red alert, because not only was flax from both political parties in lockstep, but you had the media, you had academics, you had everybody telling you the exact same thing with the exact same degree of hysteria, which to me meant there's something deeper going on. And now I don't know if they're trying to condition people like me who are naturally skeptical of government authority and whatnot to be skeptical the next time something real comes around, and they just want to kill people like me off or whatever.
No, you're charging DC with a tomahawk, dude. You got nothing to worry about.
Correct. Yeah, but this whole thing from Go was a scam, and we have this upper echelon bureaucrat, Dr. Fauci, out there, who 15 months ago, anybody that wasn't in high level medical field had no idea who this guy was. And now this is the guy that's running everybody's life, and what he says changes from day to day. And now they're wanting to roll out this vaccine passport thing, which, don't get it twisted with your vaccination record that's on your international travel passport. They are not the same thing. Your international travel passport allows you to get from one country to the other that might have dangerous diseases, to make sure that you are vaccinated against those diseases, because we have years and years and years of study and efficacy reports on the various vaccines that we have for things like yellow fever and dengue fever and measles and shit like that. No, what this vaccine passport is something that will allow you to be able to engage day life, like go to a sports ball game or enter a Walmart or something like that. You're going to have to, show me your papers, please, at every fucking storefront that gloms onto this agenda. And we have a few people that are, I don't know if they're sarcastically calling it or, whatever, but some mark of the beast type stuff. And we can get into that here in a second too.
Oh yeah, because Libertarians was trending on Twitter today because of this tweet from the Libertarian Party of Kentucky. Goes, are the vaccine passports going to be yellow, shaped like a star, and sewn on our clothes? And apparently this was very, very bad. You're not supposed to do this, because the only people allowed to make references to Nazis are people on the left when they're talking about Donald Trump and conservatives. Those are the only people who are allowed to do this. Right? I heard a woman on Bill Maher straight up call Gina Carano a Nazi just this last week, but that's okay.
A former senator.
Yes, exactly. And I love how she's a Nazi, or she hangs out with white supremacists. I'm pretty sure you're wrong about that.
Citation.
Yeah, I don't believe you, lady. I don't think she's a Nazi. It's what makes her a Nazi? She made a post talking about how we shouldn't be like Nazis. That's what makes her a Nazi. Yeah. And see, here's the thing. I get it. It's not the most tasteful tweet. A state affiliate probably shouldn't make it. We should make that tweet. That's what Road to Liberty's for, right?
Yeah.
That's the
posters.
That's the post that the Road to Liberty should make, not the Libertarian Party of Kentucky. Okay, I get that. But at the end of the day, the point is well taken. I get the point, because that is exactly what this It's not. It's not that I think they're going to round up people who don't take the COVID vaccine and put them on boxcars to Auschwitz. That's not what I think they're going to do. What I think they're going to do is they're trying to use the government to force companies to make your life as miserable as possible in order to compel everybody to do this. And this is going to be the template they use in the future for more totalitarian actions. Right? Today, they're trying to get you to take a vaccine against one of the lamest pandemic viruses in existence. Tomorrow, they're going to try to get you to give up your guns. Tomorrow, they're going to try to get you to never say a bad thing about the government every day. And they're going to use private businesses to do this. And they're going to use the threat of regulation and anti-monopoly actions, whatever. They're going to use threats against these private businesses in order to coerce them into acting the way they want to do it. They already do this with big tech. It's not to make excuses for the big tech companies already. But it's very clear when you watch these government hearings on big tech censorship, like when they have Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg in at Congress and like, what are you doing to combat hate on your platforms? Should we provide you with names of domestic terrorists so that you can keep an eye on them on your platforms? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And it's kind of like this thing where they're like, well, we can't silence people, but you can. Can we give you a list of people that you can silence for us? Yeah. And you're a private business, so it's not like, there's a First Amendment violation going on here, and every simp libertarian on the internet's going to be like, private businesses, nothing to see here.
Yep.
Just go about your business, and if you call this out, then you're a fascist.
Exactly. It's like not only can you do what we want to do and get away with it, but every conservative and every libertarian that private businesses is going to leap to your defense as soon as anybody says, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't right."
Now, I want to know if Twitter bans the Libertarian Party of Kentucky's account for this. Will LP National defend them? Will they come to their defense and say, hey, that's pretty shitty of you, Twitter. Probably shouldn't do that, silencing political parties in this country. And how much you want to bet that they don't? They don't have the balls to. They don't have the guts. What they went onto Twitter, saw libertarians was trending, so that a bunch of woke scolds were angry, like, oh no! Please don't be angry with us. We're your friends. Why are we supposed to be on the same side?
The communists who never would have voted for us ever anyways are angry with us. Whatever will we do without that big tent approach to get the tankies on our side? Jesus Christ.
No kidding.
Who's the fucking outreach director over there? Because I'd like to outreach and slap him across the face for some of the dumb shit that they've done over the past few years, trying to reach out to people like Bernie Bros and stuff like fucking idiots. Private personal property is the underpinning of this entire party, and you want to reach out to fascists? Are you daft?
Do you remember when the March for Our Lives thing was still a big thing? And they had like a nationwide school walkout, right, in order to promote gun control. And the LP tweeted to these guys like, hey, I see you're mad at the government. Here's our platform. Consider joining us. I'm like, whoa, these people do not want to join us. No. Like, we want to legalize machine guns. They want to make shotguns illegal. Like, where's the overlap here? What is your message to these guys to get them to join the Libertarian Party?
It's like
we're the guys that joke about McNukes and are only half joking, right? So what do you think these Much for Our Live guys are all about? Like, oh yeah, we want to ban scary looking semi-automatic assault weapons, and we're like, we want to legalize machine guns.
Yeah. Government bad is a plank to the platform. It is not the foundation upon which you bring in like communists and radical gun control fanatics and other people that would do exactly what they're doing right now with cancel culture. They realize that the Supreme Court is fairly consistent with upholding First Amendment and Second Amendment, or at least holding the line where it's at right now with a little bit of give and take to either side, a little more regulation or a little more freedom here and there, but they're pretty consistent with at least keeping things right where they're at. So, these culture warriors like the March for Our Lives people and the other AstroTurf communists out there that are trying to burn the whole country to the ground have figured out that what they can't do through government, they're going to do through social pressure campaigns. Mistake blue check mark on Twitter outrage for being a barometer of the culture at large, and they're applying grease to the squeaky wheel. And the only problem is that instead of squirting a little WD-40 on the hinge there to make it stop squeaking, they're just dunking the whole shopping cart right into the grease and saying, "Good enough, good enough." That's what these companies like Coca-Cola, Nike, and all of these other billion-dollar corporations that come out there and be like, "Hey, brand sees you. Please buy brand. We represent you. Please buy brand." Like,
we're sending all our guys to diversity training so that they'll all know how to not be systemically racist. Buy more Coca-Cola. Yay us.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Apple and Coca-Cola and all these other woke corporations are not only turning a blind eye to the literal slave camps in China where they get a lot of their cheap shit, but they're actively lobbying our government against sanctions and legislation condemning those camps. So they are actively participating in the near genocide of ethnic and religious minorities in China and slave camp conditions in China. And I'm waiting for that "your stream has ended" to come down from above for violating term of services, because I'm over here talking shit about China.
No, or you could be like Disney, and you can literally film your pro-China movie in the province where they're keeping Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, and then thank the regional government in your credits for letting you do so. Meanwhile, back at home, you're making the forced feminist. Like, wow, that very stunning and brave, Disney Corporation. On the one hand, using a totalitarian regime in order to film your movie so you can sell them back this terrible movie and you can thank them in the credits. And on the other hand, you're appealing to the woke mob by trying to make the force feminist. Like, I get it. I completely understand, because it's not like the woke mob actually cares about real shit. They all want to focus on microaggressions and bullshit like that. Like, people were mean to the lady who played Rose on Twitter. That's horrible. Meanwhile, that same company is filming their movies next to concentration camps. But you all don't give a shit about that, do you?
Yeah, and as far as that, the Star Wars thing in particular goes, they actually airbrushed the black guy out of the promotional posters and advertisements for the Chinese market because, hey, newsflash for all the people that want to talk about how terrible and racist America is, the Chinese really hate black people. Like, really hate black people.
It's not just Chinese, it's like all East Asians. Like, what's that? Heinz Ward, he used to play for the Steelers, right? I think his father was black, his mother was Korean, he was born in Korea, and he faced a lot of discrimination in Korea because he was black. Like, yeah, if you're military and you're stationed in Japan or Korea, then you're gonna get weird looks because there's no black people in those countries, and they're very weird towards racial minorities in those countries, right? And this is not me hating on Asians, so don't at me with that Asian Lives Matter bullshit. Don't at me with that. This is just telling you an observable truth about how a lot of East Asian countries feel towards minorities. And there's a reason they're locking Uyghur Muslims away in concentration camps in China. It's not because they love them.
Yeah. I'm probably going to get into a lot of trouble for saying this, but the Chinese and Korean and Japanese are very culturally and ethnically homogenous, and they want to keep it that way because they don't think that diversity is a strength. They see strength in unity.
In China's case, that's going to be very difficult because they also want to be an imperial power. And oh, look at that. Here come all the pro-CCP simps coming into the comment sections. Just kidding. But yeah, whenever I post something bad about the Chinese communists on Instagram or Twitter, oh my God, here comes the CCP simps in the comment section to defend China. Like, well, America's really bad. Not like China. China good. You know, Tibet's not occupied. Did you know that Imperial China used to control Tibet? But you didn't know that, did you? Like, oh, wow. Imperial China controlled Tibet as an imperial province? Oh, wow. I guess that means France belongs to Italy because, you know, the Roman Empire controlled France. I guess we should just give France back to Italy. That's how that works, right?
Let's
give the entire Middle East to Greece. That's how these things work, right?
Would that really be so bad, though?
I mean, Greece needs to bring back their monarchy and name all their kings Constantine. Then it would be cool. I want more Emperor Constantines. We didn't have enough of those. Bring him back.
Yeah. I think that the difference between like a modern day imperialist China, especially given the degree of ethnic cleansing that they've been engaging in recently and locking up their own ethnic minorities, I think that if China were to make good on their imperial ambitions, it wouldn't be like the more modern iterations of the empire, like the British Empire, when they would take over a part of the world and station a small token garrison force and just kind of govern from afar. I honestly think that China would take like an old school imperial approach where take over an area, massacre or imprison the citizenry, and move your own citizens in to occupy the land. Because they got $1.4 billion. They definitely have the manpower to do such a thing, and they certainly don't have any scruples against killing people in massive numbers. So,
I mean, they did it to their own people for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't they do it to others?
It's easy to do that when, I mean, if you can do that to your own people without a care in the world, then being able to, make of a legitimate other is probably no skin off their teeth.
Now, I kind of want to get back to this COVID passport thing. I do want to ask the question, when the Black Lives Matter riots inevitably start up this summer, are we going to require the participants to have their COVID passports, or are they just going to be good?
No, they'll be good.
And I want to know, though. I mean, are we going to try to hold everybody to the same standard here, or is once a riot breaks out, we're all going to be like, well, I mean, they're mostly vaccinated, so yay.
Yeah.
It's fiery, but mostly peaceful. So no worries there. Also, I want to know, are we going to require COVID vaccines for people crossing the southern border as well, or is this just going to be for American citizens that are going to be expected to have this thing. Now,
Yeah,
I just want to know the rules before we start with this thing.
That is some pretty deep territory to get into, because apparently not only are people that are illegally crossing the southern border not required to have COVID vaccines or even testing, but they are being essentially in a catch and release program, and they are being flown and bussed to areas of the country as far north as Montana and Idaho.
Fun stuff. And before this happened, they were all herded into very, like, by the hundreds, to very small facilities where they're in very close contact with each other. So if there was just one COVID positive person there, now they all have it, right? And now they're going everywhere. So thank you. And despite all this, Texas's COVID numbers are still going down. So
you got to be doing something right.
Riddle me that, everybody. I just want to bask in the irony of all this. How all the follow the science states in this country, like New York and California being the two biggest examples, are doing way, way worse than all the Neanderthals that they were mocking a couple of weeks ago.
So all these red states are going to like bring a plague upon themselves. These Neanderthals, and they're taking their mask mandates away. And now, just a few days ago, Joe Biden gets out there and is basically doing what I typed in the comment about, like, the please bro, just reinstate your mask mandates, bro. You're making us all look bad, bro. Just until we get this vaccine passport, bro. Please, bro. You're making us look hysterical, bro. Just please put your mask back on, bro. No.
Did you see the head of the CDC talking all doom and gloom, like, I am very scared about what's coming. We could see new record high infections, and this is not the time to let off, and blah. I'm like,
yeah.
Like here's I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see this, but here's like a graph that someone put together of states that have pretty much no lockdowns and states that have strict lockdowns. And they put on a graph their COVID cases, and they're nearly identical to one another. There's no difference between the two. And I tweeted this out. It's up on our Twitter feed. But yeah, there's no difference between the two of them. There is no evidence whatsoever at all that strict lockdowns or lockdowns of any kind actually did anything to stop the spread of COVID-19. And yet, we're all willing to many people are willing to see their economies and their states obliterated in order to perform an action that is, let's just say, has very questionable benefits.
If any at all.
Now we have a comment here. It says, BLM is collapsing. Well, right now it's dormant because it's been winter for the last few months. I don't think BLM is collapsing. I don't think the race riots we saw last year are it. I don't think they're done, right? Especially if what's his name, Derek Chauvin of the George Floyd case. Man, I hope I'm getting his name right. Yeah, especially
howdy.
Especially if he is not convicted, then you're gonna see those same race riots that we saw last year pop up again. What, you think the election of Joe fucking Biden's gonna appease these the people that were rioting last year? They don't give a shit about Joe Biden, right? They don't give a damn about him. We're gonna see riots again this year. I'm predicting right now. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think the same race riots we saw last year are going to happen again, and I don't know if they're going to be better or worse, because at least now there's not going to be a mixture. Because like last year, what we saw a lot was like a mixture of anti-cop, anti-Trump rioting, right? There was both combined. Now it's just going to be like anti-systemic racism or anti-cop, whatever. We'll see what happens. There's likely to be some kind of incident this year that incites riots again. Probably the acquittal of some officer that was accused of excessive force last year. We'll see what happens, but I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that over the winter the riots died down, and now that things are warm again, you'll probably see them start to pick up at some point.
Yeah, Adam over here said that he thinks Chauvin will be found not guilty, and I tend to agree. This is actually a little conspiracy theory that I had last year when the official charge that the DA or prosecutor or whoever it was Keith Ellison, bigwig in the Democrat Party, decided that he was going to bump it from a third-degree murder charge to a second-degree murder charge, which requires malicious intent. And I said that the reason he did that was because he wanted a not guilty plea in order for the riots to kick off, or not guilty verdict, because he wanted the riots to kick off again, because this riots and burning things down seems to destroy the thrive off of grievance culture. As long as there's something going bad, they can wring their hands and clutch their pearls and get elected off of it. So in order to have a guilty conviction of second-degree murder, the courts would have to prove that he intended to harm or kill George Floyd. And considering that the body cam footage shows that that was not the case, and that the hold that he was using on him was part of Minneapolis PD's standard operating procedure, that is impossible to convict on. So, yeah, I think that the judge bumped it back to a third degree, which is much easier to convict on and might actually happen. But if the second degree murder charge is still there, expect more riots and expect them with quite a bit of gusto.
We'll have to see what happens. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a return of the riots of last year come back this year again. Right? Because it's not just like the incidents with George Floyd, like stuff like that gets these riots started. A lot of the times, it's just outright lies. Like there was an incident in Chicago last year where there was a black individual. I think he was trying to rob a store or something like that, but he pointed a gun at the police officers, and they shot him for it, right? And all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, it's out on the internet that this unarmed black man was just gunned down by police. And next thing you know, you got storefronts in Chicago being looted, right? So it's not like there actually has to be a real incident of police brutality to spark a riot, right? Because anything can set one off, right? And anything can do that. Once you start stacking up the fuel for a riot, it just takes a spark. Any spark doesn't have to be real, right? Any sort of spark at all can start a riot, and then you got a repeat of the Summer of Love from last year.
Right, and I think that going forward, until something dramatic happens to change the cultural tempo in this country right now, this is going to be a regular yearly thing, to the point where they don't even need a reason anymore. Oh, weather's nice, it's riot season again. What are we rioting about today? I don't know. I just like breaking shit, and we did it last year. Let's do it again.
I'm angry at systemic racism. I need to think of some more buzzwords. It's the system, man. The system is the reason why I'm poor and lonely, and I can't find a girlfriend, and I can't keep a job. Let's riot, because then at least at the end of that, I'll come away with a giant flat screen TV, and that's what I really want.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And the fact that a lot of these rioters are engaging in property damage and violence, like literally right in front of police, and there's no consequences, and off chance that they do get arrested, you've got the what is it, the American League of Lawyers or something like that, and there's also funds that are being crowdsourced. That a lot of these people are engaging in real property damage and real violence that is hurting people, and they are just catch and release to go back and do it night after night with zero consequences. So it's sending them a signal that they can get away with it, and as long as they can get away with it, they will.
You know, I do want to mention before we wrap up this show, do you all remember that Colorado baker who didn't want to bake a gay wedding cake and got sued for it? Y'all remember him? He went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they ruled in his favor. Well, he's back in the news, guys. Apparently, somebody wanted him to make a gender transition cake, and he didn't want to do that either. And now they're suing him for that. I just want to point out the irony that the same people who will defend big tech censorship by saying they're private companies, they can do what they want, apparently don't think that small Colorado bakers should be afforded that same privilege. Like, this only applies to Google, it only applies to Twitter and Facebook, these big tech companies. But when some guy in Colorado doesn't want to make a gender transition cake, then it's no longer private businesses can do what they want. Now it's, oh, you're hurting my feelings, let's sue.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's, you know, the whole argument is that, you know, gay and transgender people are, you know, protected minorities with immutable characteristics and blah blah blah, and your political ideology isn't an immutable characteristic, so the private companies can discriminate on. It's like, shut up, dude. You're splitting hairs at this point, and it's like so much of the tiresome that comes from our side, that when your dogma hits reality and is found lacking, you have to adjust your principles accordingly. That's it. I'm sorry, but there's too much libertarian purity spiraling around too many issues in this world right now, and a lot of the theoretical ideology that we adhere to is coming up with reality and is being found lacking. Things like this big tech censorship, the private companies can do what they want, the open borders stuff, you know, all of it is starting to be tested and is starting to be found lacking. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not adjusting accordingly.
Well, see, the thing is, they're not seeing the government's hands in all of this. Like, this big tech censorship stuff, it's not just, oh, Google's a bunch of assholes. No, they're reacting to incentives, right? And the incentives they're reacting to are created by the government, right? When the government has all of these big tech companies and they all call them into their office, like there's some, you know, wayward high school students being called into the principal's office, and they look at them and go, what are you guys going to do about these guys we don't like on your platforms? Like, and you remember, the government holds a lot of regulatory power over these companies. Like, we can split you up. We can enforce regulations on you. We can do all this stuff. But that's not really necessary, is it? All we want you to do is police your platforms for misinformation and threats of violence. Now, I know those are vague terms. That's all we really want. So is it really necessary for us to bring antitrust lawsuits against you when really all you can do now is just fact-checked memes? Can you do that for us so we don't have to do anything to you? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
And that's what we're really talking about here.
yeah, we don't want you to do that for us. We want you to do that for you, so that we don't have to get in there. It's like the mob boss who comes in and says, it's like, oh, it's a nice bakery you got here. Would be a shame if it burned down because you didn't use our trash collection service.
Exactly. And that is the blind spot a lot of libertarians have towards this. They treat this as this is purely a free market thing. Right? And it's not. They're reacting to government incentives. They're reacting to threats. Right? I'm not defending big tech. Right? They're assholes, but they're also assholes with a gun to their heads. And they're cowards. They don't have the guts to stand up to congressmen and senators. They're all a bunch of pussies. They're not going to tell a congressman to go pound sand. We're going to do what we want. No, they're going to be like, oh, no, Mr. Congressman, there's no need. There's no need for you to regulate us anymore or split up our company. We'll do what you want. No problem. That's what the situation is. And a lot of libertarians just completely ignore that facet of it and just pretend that these big tech companies are just acting on their own and there's no big hand of government guiding their actions. Right? When you have government and corporate merger, right? That's one of the definitions of fascism, and that's kind of the path we're going down right now. Oh no, I just got canceled.
yeah, and then the whole idea of some of these corporations and their woke board of directors is a discussion for a completely other show, because we're already over an hour right now. But for the longest time, the libertarian position has been that the profit motive is the sole driver in market economies. And what we're seeing now, again, is libertarian ideology coming up against reality when you have a lot of these corporations with their boards of directors and their investors and everything that are putting the furtherance of their political ideology above the profit motive. They like their agenda more than they like money. You've seen it with Gillette, you've seen it with Nike, you see it with the NFL and the NBA. They're taking huge hits for pushing their woke political agenda, and they don't care. They're getting woke, they're going broke, and they're for broke. It's hell or high water. We're going to push this agenda, or we're going to go out of business, and we'll see how far it takes them. But yeah, let's get out of here. My piglet is crying.
All right, everybody. That's it for us. Thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. We'll see you again next week in another episode of the Token and Hobbs Show. Have a good one, everybody.